The time for questions and answers. So any of you have any questions for the speakers we have, please. I have a question for Jay. How does your project integrate with the remaking of Mumbai that we had a conference on just last year? Yes, please.
Since I tried to give a little bit of a sense, but not very much, there's a different presentation which really focuses on how this redevelopment of a mill site becomes part of the city as opposed to something that just sits in the city and takes up space. I think you posed the question as remaking of Mumbai.
We had a conference last year about remaking of Mumbai, and they were taking sections of Mumbai and developing it. How does your project integrate with the rest of the projects that they are doing around Mumbai?
Most of the development I'm not familiar with the conference, so I'm not sure if I'm responding to the right projects. But most of the development in Mumbai currently in central Mumbai is happening on these former mill sites. And as I mentioned in my presentation, it's happening in a rather haphazard, unplanned format. And so I don't know if I'm not aware of something that you are that was discussed in the conference. But it was a deep concern of ours that this 17 acres not become a gated, walled off part of the city or a sort of ad hoc maze. And so the master plan of the site, which actually has public space, a street that becomes, it's nominally private, but becomes a public street within the city, actually integrates with an existing neighborhood which has quite a bit of life in it. The programming along that street includes public parks, retail space, a museum, but it's all also at this point quite a bit in development. In this case, a 120-story building that takes 3+ years to build has taken the focus to this point, and we're now beginning to get into the detailed design of the public sphere of the project, which is very exciting to us.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
Yes, another question for Jay. Your design appeared to have balconies right the way to the top of the building. I was wondering how you're dealing with the wind effects, ability to open windows up there and get onto those balconies.
I probably don't look like Jay, but I think I'll take this one. In Mumbai, probably as in the photographs that Ahmad showed of the Burj Khalifa, I mean, the balcony railings tend to be quite high. So, the glass goes up sort of 2 meters, thereabouts. So it does provide quite a bit of shielding. And apart from that, that's about what is being done, I guess, in short.
I think that this is one of the issues that is this sort of middle zone, right, between what we would expect in a super tall building and what Mumbai expects of a super tall building. It's an issue. It's a very good and important question. I don't think that the people who live at the top of this building will be able to use their balcony every day.
Just one other thought. The other issue to keep in mind is, as I said before, the wind speed is 44 meters per second. That's the codified value. If you looked at, the opinion of wind labs, they'd probably tell you it's a much less windy place than that implies.
Thank you. Well, one question from my side for Peter. You talked about the building code. Of course, when you do a building like that, like Burj Khalifa, nothing of that is in the building code. As a result of the building, probably Ahmad will also share in this. Did you change the code, or Dubai had adopted a new code, whether in safety or structure or anything?
Yeah, as for those of you that practice around the world, you're always running into either the lack of a code or the adoption of parts of other codes. I'm sorry for the feedback. In Dubai, it was an interesting situation because we started the project in 2003, and at that point, there was kind of a mix of elements. The British had a lot of influence there, so there were some British kind of codes, standards of practice that were referred to. They weren't actually codified, not necessarily written into a bylaw or anything, but they were kind of referred to by the local authorities. On the electrical side, it was all British standards, which made a difficulty. I think Jim will talk about the conflicts that we had, because we went in and we proposed a set of codes. We proposed basically using the IBC for the building code, but using NFPA 101 for means of escape, which is not unusual in that region or other places.
Yeah, and I think that's generally the case is if you say we're going to use IBC and NFPA, that probably gets you 90% of the way. And then you have to deal both with what the local codes require, and then you have to deal with the local practices that they're not codified, but it's just what they've done for a long time. So Burj Khalifa, for example, electrical systems, fire alarm systems, emergency lighting, were all kind of based on British standard. So you always get this kind of mixture of codes. As much as we try to keep it simple and keep the international standards, there's always sort of local changes. What has happened in Dubai, and this is very typical, is as they start to build tall buildings, they'll write a high-rise code. So Dubai has kind of gone through a process of developing a high-rise code or a circular that calls for refuge floors, and some of the things that are done on a project like Burj Khalifa end up getting into the local code and becoming part of the standard practice.
Can I also? Yeah. I'd also like to add, in the years that have intervened, what were enhancements have become codified in a way. We introduced a concept called lifeboat evacuation, and now you're finding in IBC 2009 the idea of occupant elevator evacuation. It's much more stringent and has many more stringent requirements, but the idea was kind of floated, and I don't know, Burj was one of the first buildings that really, we said we would use elevators under certain managed situations to get the occupants out faster. And so we're actually having a difficulty now, because it's now 2011. The codes, the events of 9/11 have now been starting to be written into the codes, and there is a debate, whether they're actually necessary, and I'll leave that aside. But what we used to call enhancements are now mandatory, and so now we're kind of looking for enhancements, right, to bring that level of safety above the norm. So it's kind of a funny situation.
Well, thank you. Thank you really for setting the bar so high for others to follow, because what you have said in Burj Dubai is something that is the whole world is proud of, and it makes so many municipalities change their code to fit such a thing. If there are no other questions, I'd really like to thank all the speakers on behalf of all of you. Thank you very much.